Time to say I'm Kristen Ashkate. Welcome to APTN National News. Thank you for joining us. Thousands of people have been evacuated this spring after a number of wildfires continue to threaten First Nations in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. This was the scene yesterday near Caribou Creek Lodge, located about 130 kilometers northeast of Prince Albert, as wildfires there have both grown to 4 times the size of Saskatoon, with many lake homes lost. Meanwhile, the Peter Ballantyne Cree Nation, located about 400 kilometers northeast of Saskatoon, has evacuated more than 1,800 people this week. And Hall Lake has evacuated 380 people due to a wildfire in the area. Canoe Lake Cree Nation has also evacuated 565 of its members to Cold Lake and Lloydminster. Lynn Lake in Manitoba has evacuated 600 people to Winnipeg. And in Alberta, 1,300 residents in Swan Hills were ordered to leave Monday night after a wildfire threatened the community there. Saskatchewan currently has 21 active wildfires, with some resulting in highway closures. Fire bans remain in effect, and some provinces have even shut down timber and mining operations as a precaution. Officials say they are expecting higher temperatures and lower humidity that could create favorable conditions for more wildfires later this week. We will have more on tonight's newscast on the wildfires in Manitoba, and you can read more about this story by going to our website at aptnnews.ca. 2 Indigenous members of Parliament are calling for an emergency debate in the House of Commons on Jordan's principle. Lori Idlaut and Leah Gazan say there is an urgent need for the emergency debate to address a national crisis for Indigenous children. Idlaut says a backlog of applications combined with new restrictions on Jordan's principle and Inuit Child First Initiative funding has had a harmful impact on the well-being of Indigenous children in Canada. In a letter to the Speaker of the House, Idlaut says there is an emerging food security crisis in Nunavut, caused in large part by the cancellation of a food voucher program in April that fed more than 15,000 Indigenous children. Gazan says Indigenous children have been cut off from educational supports and resources, including speech therapy and food security programming. She says children with medical issues are denied the funding to address unhealthy living conditions. The family of Jordan River Anderson are expected to take part in a blockade this weekend in Manitoba's Interlake region to address alleged mismanagement and corruption in Jordan's principle. King Charles III wrapped up his 2-day tour of Ottawa on Tuesday by reading the government's speech from the throne in the Senate, followed by a quick stop at the National War Memorial. Indigenous people were a key part of both events. APTN's Fraser Needham has more.
The King began the speech from the throne with recognition of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people, an important role Indigenous people have played in the Canadian nation.
This land acknowledgement is a recognition of shared history as a nation, while continuing to deepen my own understanding. It is my great hope that in each of your communities and collectively as a country, a path is found toward truth and reconciliation in both word and deed.
The event also featured the Ottawa River Singers and 18-year-old Manitoba Métis fiddler Morgan Grace. Interviewed later in the day, Grace said the significance of the moment was not lost on her.
That I'm so lucky to be here, and I know that it's not an opportunity that many people get, so I'm honored. And just being able to represent my family and the Métis people at home.
Former Algonquins of Bikwaknagan chief and Canadian War veteran Wendy Jocko served as the bearer for the monarch when he laid a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier. Jocko said King Charles has come to Canada during a significant moment in the nation's history.
It's also the 80th anniversary of the end of the Second World War and the liberation of the Netherlands. So it's quite a significant year, and it's quite significant that the King has come over for this ceremony and to meet Prime Minister Carney, because, you know, we've really walked a long way since 1812 together.
Our relationship is with
Meanwhile, at a nearby event in front of the Chateau Laurier Hotel, First Nations chiefs from Western Canada responded to the speech from the throne. Southern Chiefs Organization Grand Chief Jerry Daniels said they appreciated the monarch's visit and the mention of Indigenous peoples in the throne speech, but it was a lost opportunity to meet with more First Nations leaders than just Assembly of First Nations National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Neepanak.
For hundreds of years, they were having pipe ceremony with us in our lands, and that was the respect that should still continue. You can't create organizations and simply bypass the grassroots chiefs and the nations that make up this country. And so it's very important that those relationships are respected in a way, I think, that reflects what we need to be doing in this country.
The throne speech mentioned the creation of a major federal projects office, which would reduce the approval for major projects from 5 years to 2. After the speech, that remark caused Manitoba Chief Derek Neepanak to say, "Be ready, they're coming for us." Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
In other news, Capewick First Nation Chief Lance Heyman says reconciliation is a nice word, but he says the federal and Quebec governments need to commit to what he calls reconciliation. As APTN's Savannah Craig reports, Chief Heyman held a press conference with supporters in Montreal this week to denounce a near-surface disposal facility that will be built to store low-level radioactive waste near Chalk River, Ontario.
They issued a permit to kill. That's what Section 73 permit is.
Chief Lance Heyman is talking about the federal government permitting Canadian nuclear laboratories to bury 1 million tons of low-level radioactive waste near Chalk River in a site about a kilometre away from the Ottawa River.
The facility, less than a kilometre from the Ottawa River, remains a serious threat to our lands, our waters, our rights, and to the health of millions of people in Quebec and Ontario.
Capewick began their fight against this proposed site more than a year ago in court. Last February, the federal court ordered the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission and Canadian Nuclear Laboratories to consult the community.
We expect that this case will go to the Supreme Court.
He says this process will likely cost Capewick over $1 million.
We're a little, Algonquin community in the middle of nowhere, Quebec, who has to, basically find ways and means and raise funds to be able to defend our rights. And the challenge is that Canada and Quebec can keep us in court forever.
Chief Heyman says Prime Minister Mark Carney is new to the scene, so he may not be well informed of the issue, but says many in his cabinet can advise him.
I think about Minister Wilkinson, Minister Guilbeault, all these folks are still there. They took a position, which was in essence to do nothing.
A spill in this watershed will lead to irreversible consequences.
Assembly of First Nations Quebec and Labrador Regional Chief Francis Verreau-Paul says both the federal and Quebec governments need to take a stance against this facility instead of fighting with First Nations in court.
I don't think this is the best way to reinforce a relationship. So I'm really hoping that Quebec government will be open to have those discussions before putting project in place and respecting the will of the First Nations so that we can build a strong future all together.
This disposal facility will hold 1 million tons of radioactive waste and persistent chemical toxins like asbestos and lead.
Gordon Edwards is the president for the Canadian Coalition for Nuclear Responsibility. He says radioactive waste shouldn't be stored in the ground and left there, but put in packages that are labeled.
These packages should be strong enough to resist the forces of nature and prevent them from leaking. But of course, nothing can resist the force of nature forever, so it becomes an intergenerational problem.
Edwards also wants to see an end to the creation of radioactive waste.
That's what most Indigenous groups, when they learn about the nature of these materials, they say, number one, stop making it.
Savannah Craig, APTN National News, Montreal.
We're always looking for your feedback or story ideas. Here's how you can continue the conversation with us. If you have a story you want to share, send us an email to news@aptn.ca. And to read and watch our stories, go to aptnnews.ca. And you can also find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. A First Nation in Ontario is one step closer to data sovereignty. We'll tell you what it all means when we come back in about 3 minutes. Stay with us. Welcome back. Wickwamacwang unceded territory in Ontario is marking a major milestone with the arrival and installation of a new data center. Officials say they believe it is the first of its kind project not only in the province but potentially in the country. CTV's Lindsay Alick reports.
The new data center travels across the Little Current Swing Bridge as it makes its way to its new home on Wickwamacwang unceded territory.
It was something that was brought forth by our administration team. And why can't we look at our own data sovereignty? And why are we relying on other outsourced vendors to, have control over all of the information stored within our First Nation community?
A data center is a secure facility that is designed to house servers and computing systems. It's responsible for storing, managing, and accessing digital information.
From my understanding and talking to our administration staff, this is the first of its kind in any First Nation community, either provincially or nationally. If not, I'm not sure globally, but I know Wickwamacwang unceded territory. Our quote is proud, progressive, and prosperous. So when we're looking at taking that new innovative approach, it is a very unique step.
Currently, we store all data in our Microsoft Data Storage Center in Toronto, but it was important for us to be able to bring that data back to our territory so it can be a vehicle that we can use to repatriate our data out there that's currently out there right now.
Beyond safeguarding data, the hope is the new center will create new employment opportunities.
We're hoping that this will kind of invigorate our youth to kind of join the IT ranks. We're hoping that as community members pass by and have a look, and we have open houses with this, that it might stimulate youth to get involved into the sector.
McCormick says while the center is on the First Nation currently, data is still in the process of being moved over. He says from here on out, all videos, apps, language, and even traditions will be kept there for future generations. Lindsay Alick, CTV News, Sudbury.
2 teenagers from Toronto have been arrested and are facing multiple drug and weapons charges after their vehicle collided with a moose last weekend. The Anishinaabe Police Service says officers responded to reports of a vehicle striking a moose on Highway 69 in Wallbridge Township Saturday. No one was injured, but police say there was a strong smell of cannabis coming from the vehicle. Officers also seized suspected fentanyl and a gun and 16 rounds of ammunition from 2 16-year-old boys. A sad update now about an elderly First Nations man who went missing from Edmonton last month. According to the Edmonton Police Service and the family, 66-year-old Brian Potts was found deceased after he went missing from the Royal Alexandra Hospital last month. On April 10th, Potts, who lives with dementia, was visiting his son in hospital when he suddenly wandered off on foot. 5 days later, Edmonton police said Potts was spotted on a number of transit buses in the Westmount area in Edmonton. At the time, the family was worried for Potts' well-being as he needed his medication for his dementia and diabetes. Sadly, on May 14th, Potts was located deceased, and his death was deemed non-criminal by the Edmonton Police Service. The family says before his death, Potts waved down a taxi on Grote Road in Edmonton and asked the cab driver to take him to the town of Onaway, just 60 kilometers northwest of Edmonton. According to family, after a possible disagreement on pay and Potts unsure of where he needed to go, the cab driver dropped Potts off on Township Road 540 and Range Road 21, just south of Onaway, after Potts told the cab driver he thought they were near his house. Search and rescue later found Potts deceased more than a kilometer away in a wooded area. The family says they are now exploring their options on what to do next.
The dead end. That's where he got off, and he was later. My uncle walked down a cut line, going south, and it was probably about. The police said it was about 1.5 kilometers from where he got off, and that's where the search and rescue team found him on May 17th. My uncle played a really big role in our lives, and a lot of people. He adopted a lot of kids, and my uncle had a really big loving heart.
A residential school survivor in BC has recently released a new book. We'll tell you all about it when we come back in less than 3 minutes. On the east coast, Charlottetown 24, Halifax sunny and 18. Nuujulak 8 and partly cloudy, La Grande River 14. Saskatchewan 13, Quebec City 22. Windsor 14, Peterborough 20 and sun. Wawa 19, Thunder Bay 20. Norway House 22, Thompson 16. 21 in Gimli, Dauphin sunny there and 22. 20 in North Battleford, Yorkton 19. 20 in Meadow Lake, LaRange 23. Sunny at Fort McMurray and 30 in High Level. 27 in Lethbridge, Red Deer 27. 28 in Penticton, Campbell River, showers and 23. 22 Smithers, Prince George 28 and partly cloudy. 16 Whitehorse, Mayo 18. Showers in Fort Simpson at 28, Watee 21 and partly cloudy. Fort McPherson 14, Inuvik 13. 8 in Baker Lake, Cambridge Bay, Smoky there and 10. And Iqaluit 3 in rain, Igloolik 4 in rain. Thanks for staying with us. Tanemsha, also known as Arnie Narcisse, is a father and a grandfather, an Indigenous fishing rights advocate, a residential school survivor, and he is now a published author. His book, Hard to Be a Good Indian, is said to be a powerful and deeply personal memoir of survival, resilience, and identity in the face of systemic cultural destruction. Tanemsha, who is a member of the St'át'imc Nation close to Lillooet, BC, is holding an official book launch today in Merritt, BC. We recently spoke to him about the book. Here's that interview. Thanks for joining us today, Tanemsha, and congrats on your new book. I understand the book talks about the many years you spent in the residential school system in Kamloops. Can you briefly tell me a little bit about the experiences you described in this book?
Well, the book actually covers my experiences over 11 years in 2 schools. The first one was up at Williams Lake at a place called St. Joseph's Mission. I was up there for 3 years, and then I was sent to Kamloops for 8 years, so 11 years in total.
And what experiences did you go through in those schools?
Well, the story describes my 11 years and begins with the day that I was taken away at the age of 6, and it describes the shock and everything that I'm sure every little child that was taken away at 6 years old felt. The rapid change in environment and everything that went on with it, with that first day. Then it goes on to describe the first experiences that I had with crayons and what you name it. And it goes on to describe different things that happened at the school. My time there ended with a big brawl between a number of nations. What that did, it brought the realization to the church and to the school that you couldn't go mixing all these different tribes of Indians together. So they sent us to Kamloops, and that's how I ended up over in Kamloops.
It's hard and an emotional topic to write about. You also, brighten up a little bit by telling us some more lighthearted stories. But what made you want to tell your story in this book?
Actually, it started 9 years ago when my grandson, his name is Montana Mountain Chief Jr., he was grade 3 at the time, and he came home. And apparently they were talking about Indian schools that day. And he came home and he asked me a simple question. He says, "What did you do at the Indian school, Papa?" And it was the first time I was asked this question. I've got 5 children. None of them asked me the question. Just let sleeping dogs lie, I suppose. And so he asked me the question. I told him, well, I got to think about that. So that first night, I wrote down a few things, scribbled down a few notes. Next night, a few more. And over about a year, I came up with a book full of notes. And then that turned into these pieces of paper here. And this one here, and that all eventually turned into the book.
Wow.
And all of those are in here. So that's how it started. My friend Leroy Slanzy, who is the principal of the local band school, took it upon himself to do the publication of the book. Just before the spring break, I gave him this bag here and all of this material here.
Yeah.
And I said, have a look at that stuff. And I said, it'll give you a sense of what it was all about. And I had no idea that he was intending to turn it into a book. So he called me on April 30th, said, I got a surprise for you. So he comes up and here's the book.
Wow.
So it contains all of this material here.
Right
And so we're working with him. We're working with the local university on curriculum development efforts as well.
Yeah. Tanemsha, what impact are you hoping the book will have on readers?
Well, what I'm hoping is that people will realize that we had to go through a whole lot of adaptation in our time there. And unfortunately, you know, some guys are still hurting from that time there. And people need to recognize that there is a direct correlation, there is a direct connection between that experience and all of the experiences we're going on in our communities right now. All of the social issues, social problem, you name a problem, you can point right back to the Indian school as being the origin of that problem. And that's what I'm hoping. It's about awareness. It's about, the first step is always awareness. Hopefully we'll get some empathy, hopefully we'll get some understanding, and hopefully we'll get some action.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
Well, good luck at your book launch, Tanemsha, in Merritt, and thanks for speaking with us today. We really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time and showing an interest in this, and perhaps we can do a follow-up at some point and carry on the story.
And Tanemsha is currently working on writing and publishing 3 more books in the future. And that's your daytime newscast for this Wednesday. I'll be back in a few hours for your evening newscast. Please join us then. From all of us at APTN National News, hi miigwech masicho kwana. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next day.